This is the ICO Alert Podcast, episode 16. I'm your host, Robert Finch, founder of ICO Alert. ICO Alert maintains the only comprehensive list of every single initial coin offering. That includes all of the active ICOs that are happening now, as well as all of the upcoming ICOs. You can check out the full list on our website at icoalert.com. My guest today is Sideman, the CEO of Props by YouNow. YouNow is an existing company with more than 40 million users getting ready to launch their ICO, and on the podcast, we'll talk with about the benefits and drawbacks of decentralization, how they've created a new genre of participatory experiences or games, why they believe open source is the future, and more. Without further ado, let's get to it. Adi, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Rob.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really exciting to have you on. And for those that listened to us last week, we interviewed the CEO of PlayKey, and you guys have some similarities, mainly in the fact that you already have an existing user base of millions of users. Could you tell us a little bit about that user base and what YouNow and Props actually is?
Sure. So we've been running YouNow since 2011. By 2015, it was actually the largest live streaming mobile service in the U.S., and we have today 40 million registered users.
Wow.
Yeah, and the most exciting part about it is that they do microtransactions today. So we have about 60,000 microtransactions each day today. And with Props, we are leveraging our experience in mobile consumer video, our team of 45 people based here in New York City, our community of millions of users, and our money in, money out, two-sided microtransaction ecosystem, with the addition of blockchain technology and cryptocurrency to go after a much bigger opportunity, which is to decentralize digital media distribution itself. So think about it as the decentralized YouTube with a focus on interactive video, live video, and linear video.
Okay, very cool. So YouNow, as it stands right now, is your existing live streaming platform, and Props is kind of this new project that you're building. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. We've been working on it for the past 12 months, and we introduced a whole new stack of video to allow for many-to-many video, as opposed to one-to-many video, which you see today in live streaming. And it lends itself to many more use cases. And so we're opening it up for developers to allow for any kind of interaction that can happen between people in real life to happen digitally, whether it is watching linear television together, or whether it's participating in a game show or a trivia or a reality show, or whether it's commerce like an auction, anything that people can do in real life. We believe there is demand to build experiences on mobile devices for people to do digitally, and that's what the Props ecosystem is all about.
Okay, very cool. So if you had to sum up kind of the differences between Props and YouNow in a couple sentences, how would you do that?
Well, I would start by saying we're very proud and we credit ourselves for inventing the live streaming space on mobile in the U.S. We were the first to do it when we started in 2011. And then again, we were the first to bring this two-sided market where people can buy into a virtual currency, which today is in-app. And we did that in 2014, and other people can earn it. And so by taking it to the next level, the big differences, I would say, are three. One is multiple use cases. Today's live streaming templates are all very similar. There's one person broadcasting and a bunch of people in the audience who are invisible and can write chat. And this has been replicated again and again with Facebook Live, with YouTube Live, with Twitter Periscope. who said that that is the only way for interactive video to work on mobile devices? So by opening it up to multiple use cases, by opening up the platform for developers and allowing any use case to be built on the ecosystem, it makes the opportunity much greater and the servicing end users in a much better way through any kind of interactive video experience. So that's one, use cases. The second is that everybody is equal. So, today, if you look at it, there is mostly one broadcaster who can get likes and gifts and can ultimately get paid. And that's about 5% of the users. So think about it, 95% of the users can't even get a like, which is the basic social currency. Yeah, and that's correct on any kind of live streaming platform today. So by democratizing it and by having a platform where everybody's equal, everybody is live whether they're broadcasting or not. They can chat with each other in the audience. They can interact through any kind of logic that a developer decides. We're opening it up for everyone to be able to receive a like, everyone be able to receive a gift, and everyone be able to actually earn currency and revenue, which leads us to the third thing, which is to take the ecosystem that today is limited to an in-app ecosystem and decentralize it and tokenize it. And if you think about it, today most of the people who earn on YouNow are YouTuber types. And they're influencers who are independent content creators. And at the end of the month, we write checks to thousands of creators who earn on the platform. Well, tomorrow, the extent is really exciting. Anybody who contributes to the value of the network, of the ecosystem, gets rewarded. And so we change our entire business model from being rent collectors like YouTube and Facebook, which take 40 to 50% of the transactions, to being completely aligned with all of the users who are in the system, because we all work to appreciate the token. And that becomes our business model, so much so that we are changing from a C Corp to a B Corp with a mission to appreciate the value of the token and be aligned with our users. So whether it is an independent content creator who is earning based on the eyeballs and the money spent during their broadcast, or Comcast, who is one of our investors, who is putting up linear programming and people can watch it together and they earn based on that, or a simple 16-year-old user who invited 20 of their friends. And we know the exact value to the network and to the ecosystem of those 20 new registered users. And that person gets rewarded for their contribution to the network. So when we're talking about democratizing, it's not just the actual user experience, but is also the participation in the value created by the network. And blockchain allows us to do it in equitable, transparent, and algorithmic way, where mathematically people are rewarded based on their contribution.
Okay, very cool. So there's a lot of info there that I definitely want to jump into and unpack a little bit later in the podcast. You mentioned, you're a B Corp. You mentioned some of your investors and kind of how their compensation structure may change with this. I got a lot of questions about that. But first, what I wanted to talk with you about was kind of your reasons for decentralizing. So first of all, just very briefly, how did you get into cryptocurrency?
So we're mobile video guys. I've been doing interactive video since before the internet, believe it or not. When it started in the mid-90s doing enhanced CDs. So enhanced CDs, for those of you who don't know, you used to buy an audio disc in the store, and computers started to have CD-ROM drives, and you would put the audio disc in the CD-ROM drive and it would play music. Amazing. But it also had a digital track, and on that digital track you could play games and watch videos and do stuff that the artists and musicians wanted you to do and get more insight into their world. So I did that for Marilyn Manson and Nine Inch Nails and Peter Gabriel's and others. And then when the internet started doing it on the web. Make your own MTV music video, make your own Toyota car commercial, make your own E-Trade baby. Always very, very passionate to enable consumers to communicate through video. I co-founded the world's first online karaoke, which sold to Fox MySpace at the height of MySpace in 2006.
Wow.
And did a bunch of other projects. And in 2011, started what was the holy grail in my circles, which is any user can be creating and communicating through media with just a press of a button from their mobile devices. And so, the team here is also very experienced around interactive video. And we are part of the Union Square Ventures family. We've been very fortunate. They've been a great backward investor for us, and through them got to meet the founder of Coinbase, Armstrong, and he gave me my first Bitcoin about
very cool.
4 years ago. And so it's always been an idea in the back of our minds. And don't forget, we have a virtual economy today that is at scale, with a couple $1 million coming in every month and 60,000 transactions a day.
Yeah.
And so, we're kind of experts in running a virtual economy, and taking it to the next level, making it crypto, allows us to really, cater to the community of users and people out in the world. In the end of the day, we're 45 people. It's a small company. We wish to harness the power and creativity and smarts and energy of our millions of users and tens of thousands of developers and community members. And by enabling them to have a real personal stake in the platform, we're creating an environment which a smaller company like ourselves can really build something big. And it's very ambitious, really, to decentralize, digital media distribution, and we think it's the right time for it.
Okay. Yeah, that's what's so interesting to me about this, is that you have this system that seems to be working well. I mean, you've had the centralized, digital currency in your app. People are using it to tip other creators and gift other creators and things like that. If everything's working so well, I mean, is the main reason why you're decentralizing just because you see that's like the natural way things are going, or is it all about community, all about attracting more people to the platform?
It's all about realizing our vision, which is to bring interactive video and personal video communication to the masses. And I think that in today's centralized world, you have a few dominant players. And they suck all the air out of the system, and they copy every successful app out there. And in the end of the day, in order for us to, really take this to the next level and realize our vision of allowing anyone to interact with video in any kind of a way, think about it. Television programming, television rating have been going down for years. Where are all these eyeballs? They're moving to Instagram and Snapchat, and those, templates are limited. You can do one certain thing with it. Imagine an environment where any developer can develop their logic around it. So we're already doing auditions for America's Got Talent on YouNow.
Oh, really? That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, on one side of the screen, you have the producer from America's Got Talent, and on the other side, you have audiences at home who are trying out as contestants, and the audience is watching it all live, and anyone can get in line and try out. Well, that's just one template that, in this case, Fremantle Media, who owns America's Got Talent, is running. Guess what? There are hundreds of TV shows who are looking at ratings that are going down and are asking themselves, how can we capture some of those Snapchat and Instagram eyeballs? And, slowly but surely, what we believe is we're going to see more and more of that functionality, of that IP, migrating to the mobile device and harnessing the fact that all these mobile devices have audio in and audio out. And the format really enables participation with media. I'll tell you another story. I have a friend who is the chief marketing officer of one of the largest auction houses in the world. And they're live streaming their auctions, and it's not just high art. It's motorcycles, it's wines, it's anything.
Oh, wow.
And they're looking for ways for the people at home to participate in those auctions. Well, this platform allows somebody like them to program that functionality for their use case. And so, we really look at it as a platform that allows any kind of participation with a commerce layer on top of it for entertainment, for education, and for social gaming, any kind of use case.
That's very cool. See, when you give all those examples, I mean, something like this makes perfect sense. Whereas from the outside, if you're just looking at, okay, they're decentralizing their platform, it doesn't make as much sense. But when you start to bring in all these examples about how, developers can build their own apps on top of it, and you're integrating with all these different people who are kind of augmenting their existing businesses, it becomes this whole ecosystem, which I think is pretty fascinating. One of the main questions that some members of our community had about your project is specifically when it comes to managing the cryptocurrency within your app. So one of the main concerns people are having, or at least some members of our community are having, is, hey, if your current centralized digital currency works and it's easy to use, and if a user forgets their password, they can recover it and log back in, are there any trade-offs you're making by decentralizing this? And what I mean by that specifically is, do your users now have to worry about storing their private keys and worry about, if they lose their private key, they can't actually recover it? Or are you guys kind of handling that process for them?
So it's a great question. And our approach, since we started developing this project a year ago, has always been a very practical approach to get to the mass market through channels and tools that they can use. So as such, we actually have two currencies within our network. The first one is the regular in-app currency that people already buy today and are used to it, and they don't need to know anything about crypto in order to use. And then the second is our cryptocurrency props, which we use initially to reward the contributors to the network. So think about it. Literally every day, all the contributors to the network get a push notification telling them how many new props they earned. It's almost like, consider it like mining, but in this case, they're mining by engaging audiences and by contributing to the network.
Interesting.
Whether it's through content creation, whether it's through they've developed a functionality in the system that is being used, whether they invited their friends and promoted it, and there's the exact formulas by which those rewards are calculated mathematically every 24 hours in our white paper, and I encourage folks to go to propsproject.com to check it out. But that's the balance between those two currencies allow us to target the mass markets today while benefiting from a lot of the value that cryptocurrency has to offer. And what we've learned is, by paying thousands of people every month today, is that people will jump through some hoops. They still need to do a W-9 today, and they still need to fill out some forms, and we still need to know who they are, and there needs to be some KYC. And that's not going to change, except here, once they're motivated because there's value there for them, whether it's $5 or $50 or $500, they will bother themselves to create a wallet and to take custody, which is a little bit of a speed bump, but not much bigger than they need to do today to take value out of any system.
Okay, that's a great answer. And it makes a lot of sense, too. I mean, if a user has, say, $100 locked up in props, they're going to be way more incentivized to actually learn how to manage it and access it than if it was $1. So that's awesome. Going back to kind of talking about your monetization structure, I was watching a presentation, I'm not sure at which conference, but it was where you and Jonathan, I believe is his name, were kind of announcing the props platform or giving people a demo on it. And what I thought was really interesting was Jonathan mentioned the current monetization structure kind of benefits your early investors the most. So he had this kind of diagram where he showed, all the different people who take part in the platform, whether you're a creator or you're an investor or you're a viewer or something like that, and where most of the value goes. And in the first example, most of the value goes to those early investors, to the people who invested in this platform, rightfully so. Now they own it. They should get a lot of that value. But what's interesting is then he showed a second slide, which is now kind of the direction you guys are headed. And this model showed a lot of that value actually going to the users, to the people who are, arguably adding that value to the platform. And my main question for you is, why are all of your huge, venture capitalist backers, you have Union Square Ventures, Venrock, Comcast Ventures, why are they so open to this kind of shakeup of their business model, where it seems in the past version, or I guess in the existing version today, they're benefiting the most? Why do you think that they're so willing to give up that control and give up some of that value back to the users?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I'll answer it in a few ways. One, in terms of the token allocation, our company YouNow retains 26% of the tokens, and so if the token value appreciates, and our model, which is to harness the millions of users who can benefit from the appreciation of the token alongside us and be completely aligned with them, if that works, then our cap table benefits from the appreciation of that 26%. So that's one, and that's an important note to make. Now, we believe that, just like open source development is proving itself, and we believe that's where the world is heading, we believe in open sourcing the value that everybody can bring into a network, and that we as part owners of the network are going to benefit from it much more than if we remain closed and we are fighting big centralized systems who are entrenched. How can that succeed if we do not harness the energy and work alongside millions of people who are aligned with us in order to grow the network? And so that's at the heart of what we are doing here, and that's the short answer.
Okay, great. No, that makes a lot of sense, and it's always good to hear that the incentives are aligned. That's one of the kind of the most interesting things about all of these different ICOs, is that you can play around with these different incentive structures and kind of come up with the one that works the best. But it sounds like you guys have come up with one that seems to work pretty well. Talking about these apps, so you mentioned earlier in that rundown of like the three major things that differentiate Props from YouNow or other existing streaming services. One of them was apps. So any developer can come, they can build on top of the Props platform, they can make their own app using the Props token. But what was interesting is I found you guys are actually releasing your own app, which is called Rise, R-I-Z-E, not to be confused with Rise, R-I-S-E, which is another blockchain platform. But Rise, R-I-Z-E, will be the first app on top of Props. Can you explain what it is?
Yes, absolutely. So Rise is the first platform on top of the Props ecosystem. And it is a platform for interactive video. It allows for an unlimited number of concurrent user video streams that interact with each other, allow to give likes and gifts and value and currency between each other, allows them to do the traditional live streaming as they do on YouNow today, but also other use cases like watching together. So you can watch together YouTube videos or MTV content, video, linear programming, etc. And we chose interactive video Rise as the first platform with microtransactions because we know that microtransactions are an incredibly good business model. As a matter of fact, Mary Meeker released just earlier in the year a chart comparing average revenue per user per hour from microtransaction as compared to advertising, and it's literally almost 10x in terms of, yeah. And so we wanted to showcase and to put out the first use case of the network on the day that we distribute the tokens to the world. Unlike many other projects who have a white paper and are doing ICOs, we actually have a working product that is released to the public on day one. And so Rise is that product, and anybody who participates in our token distribution event will have access to that platform on day one.
Okay, very cool. So in terms of, developers and which apps they're going to build, I mean, could you give us a couple examples of what you foresee being built on top of Rise, other than, more apps where you can watch together or watch different events? Like, do you have any kind of out there ideas of what people might be building?
So I can give you a sneak preview.
Sure.
First of all, imagine any kind of social game. So even like name that tune. People playing that together, let's see who recognized the first one. Another example is, are you familiar with the social game, party game, Mafia Wars?
No, I'm not.
Okay, so it's this, I'll tell you the story. So about a month ago, my chairman of the board, Oren Zeev, forwarded me this article from The Information, and it was about this game called Mafia Wars, also known as Werewolf. And apparently it's all the rage in China. And it's a party game where you need 5 to 10 people to play. You pass out cards. 2 of the cards indicate that you are the mafia, and then everybody discusses who are the mafia and how can we find out which members.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And so, I had no idea that this was, that there are multiple mobile apps in China allowing people to play it from the comfort of their own phone. And it makes sense because you don't always have 5 to 10 friends next to you. And now you can just press a button and become a part of a group of video folks who are playing that game. And it's, a big business, hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue in China. So long story short, my chairman asked me, can we do that on Rise and Props? And my answer was yes. And this is exactly the reason why we developed this platform. Because, unlike in the past where you had to go to an investor and raise a couple of $1 million and build the video technology and then figure out the two-sided economy and what people are buying and how they're buying it, and then, work to distribute it to the consumers. Here, the platform comes built in with the many-to-many technology. It comes built in with the two-sided market and the business model, allowing the developer to decide, how much for what and what people are buying and what superpowers or permissions they're getting or access they're getting. And it comes with the built-in distribution of the platform to our millions of users. And so, whether it is Mafia Wars, or whether it's other social games, the idea that you can rapidly develop something, as opposed to taking, a couple $1 million and months of work and then trying to get it to the market, here, you have the basic building blocks ready to go. And for a relatively, small engineering effort, you could be building any kind of a social experience for the users.
Okay, and it just clicked for me, and it may have just clicked for a lot of the listeners as well. This is pretty fascinating, and I was trying to think while you're talking on what to call these types of games, like these games that use video or live streaming, and I immediately went video games. Oh no, that doesn't really explain it. It's almost like live streaming games. Is that the way you would kind of categorize this? Because it almost seems like you're making a new category of game.
Yeah, I don't want to limit it by calling it live streaming or live streaming game, but I think about it as, there's a trend in the world, which is, folks are moving to participate with their media. And we see it with the fact that 65% of Snapchat users are creating content and they're on video. We see the fact that, almost 2 billion people in the world play video games. And, they are participating in the moving image experience that is unfolding right in front of them. And so, there is a desire to not just lean in, but jump in, especially amongst the new generation who was born with, iPads all around them and are very much used to jumping into screens. And so, this platform and this technology allows for rapid development of any kind of participatory experience.
Okay, very cool. It's interesting, these participatory experiences. I mean, I could see so many different applications being built on top of this, so many creative games, especially, once this platform is launched and it's open to developers and anybody can go and build on it. I mean, that the games that are these participatory experiences, that are being built. I mean, I think we're going to see things that neither of us can probably imagine now, and it's going to be very exciting to see how that all develops. So that's very cool. I want to talk more about the kind of the tech side of your platform, how it all works. So you mentioned, you guys are using microtransactions. Is that going to be the case with the cryptocurrency as well? And are you sending those microtransactions directly on the Ethereum blockchain, or are you kind of doing it on your own internal ledger?
Yes, so that's a great question. So unfortunately today, Ethereum cannot handle the kind of volume that we are used to.
Right.
And so what we're doing is we're resolving it every 24 hours against the Ethereum ledger. And we are literally taking the revenue that comes in from the in-app purchases and immediately purchasing props from the market against them. And so we are impacting the props ecosystem directly through the fiat that is coming in real time. And then every 24 hours, we are calculating, the system calculates mathematically all the contributions that happened to the network in that past 24 hours and divides the divides the props, which include the fiat that came in during that 24 hours and a bunch of tokens that live in a token reward pool that is meant to help jumpstart the network and that we haven't talked about and we can, and then distributes that every 24 hours to all the contributors to the network.
Okay, so you guys are actually going in and buying a bunch of props every day, essentially? Is that?
That's correct.
Okay, interesting. And talking about scalability, I mean, in the future, if you wanted to run all of this on a blockchain where every microtransaction was actually sent on a blockchain, are you open to moving to other platforms like EOS or some of these other platforms that are more scalable or aiming to be more scalable than Ethereum? Or are you totally kind of locked to Ethereum at this point?
We're not ruling out anything. Our approach is very practical, which is why we're taking this path where this can actually work today, and there's an advantage in having a first mover advantage there too. We just want to cater to millions of users and not put up any kind of speed bumps. And if in the future there is a more equitable, faster solution, we will consider it.
Okay, awesome. And I think that's wise from a business standpoint as well, of course. Let's talk about that user reward pool. Is this kind of where you have a bunch of tokens and you're incentivizing people to join the platform, or how does that all work?
So if you guys who are listening take a look at the white paper, there's the pie chart there. And basically, 70% of all the tokens will be out in the world eventually. 20% are sold in the token sale event, and another 50%, 50, are held by a nonprofit Swiss foundation that's job is to logarithmically and algorithmically distribute out those rewards to the individuals and the companies who contribute to the network, whether they're developers, content creators, people who build apps or other platforms on the network. And so we're really excited about that because A, it gets the vast majority of the props out there into the right hands, and B, it helps create a token network effect where from day one, we're not only reliant on the in-app purchases in order to distribute value to the contributors to the network, but we have this additional very large reward pool, 50% of all the tokens, that is logarithmically dished out to the contributors to the network. So early on, just like the case of Ethereum or Bitcoin, the initial miners of those networks received outsized rewards and outsized value. Here will be the same case where we are jump-starting the ecosystem by having this reward pool in place day one.
Okay, that's awesome. And I think it's always good to hear that people are distributing the majority of tokens. There was a similar token sale, Kin or Kin by Kick, that had a token sale recently, and there was a lot of criticism in the community that they were only distributing 10% of their total tokens. And I know a lot of the tokens that they're holding kind of falls into a user reward pool as well. But it's always interesting going back to the incentives being aligned, that you are distributing the majority to the users. So I just wanted to comment and say that that's great. Talking about your B Corporation status. So I did a little research on this before the call, and a B Corp or B Corporation, to those that don't know, is essentially to a business what fair trade certification is to coffee, and I'm taking this from online from Google, or USDA organic certification is to milk. So it goes on to say that B Corps are for-profit companies certified by the nonprofit B Lab to meet rigorous standards of social and environmental performance, accountability, and transparency. And I looked up a couple existing companies, and Kickstarter is actually a well-known example of a B Corp. So why is this such an important part of your mission? Why a B Corp? Why not just keep your existing structure?
So I think it's very important, and thank you for asking that question. It's very important for us as a privately held company who is jumpstarting this ecosystem, not only to put 50% of the rewards in the hands of a nonprofit organization that is responsible to enhance the ecosystem and shepherd the ecosystem forward and dish out the rewards in an equitable and transparent fashion, but to go a step beyond that and to turn our own organization from a C Corp that is focused on solely on profits to its shareholders to a B Corp that has also a public benefit mission. And our public benefit mission is to enhance the value of the props ecosystem. And so we are looking to make a point of our alignment. De facto, it's what's happening behind the scenes in any case. We're changing our business model from being rent collectors and taking 50% cut of every transaction to not doing that and being aligned with everybody in the community and seeing our portion of the tokens appreciate just like everybody else wants to see their portion of the tokens appreciate. So we're doing it in any case. By turning ourselves into a B Corp, we are simply making a statement that, our responsibility is not just to worry about our shareholders, but it is augmented with a responsibility to the greater ecosystem, which is to see the prop ecosystem grow.
That's awesome. So if you guys didn't, just hypothetically, because I'm sure you will, but if you guys didn't, follow these quote unquote rigorous standards, would the B Lab come out and actually say that?
I'm not sure how the B Lab works, and I know that the certification is good for 2 years, and within those 2 years, you actually need to change your organizational charter legally if you're filing in Delaware, and that's the path we're headed to.
Okay, very cool. Then let's talk a little bit about your ICO. So I think we've gone over the platform a lot, and the level of clarification that I have now is much higher than it was before the podcast, and I hope it's the same for a lot of the people listening and a lot of the people that submitted questions as well. But talking about your ICO, so you've raised, I was doing some research, you raised about $30 million from private VC in 6 years since YouNow was founded in 2011. Why are you doing the fundraising portion of an ICO? Is it more money to kind of bootstrap your new mission? What's the reason behind it?
Sure. So, it's important for us to get to the market quickly and to establish the value of the ecosystem day one. And by doing a token sale and by establishing a value for our token, we are able to do that very effectively. The other thing is that there has always been a demand for our in-app currency, and we're used to, selling currency, so to speak. And so this comes very natural for us. And of course, the third thing is, we are embarking on a much more ambitious mission than YouNow has ever had. And to do that, we absolutely want to make sure that we are funded well enough in order to achieve these big, ambitious goals that we went through over earlier in this conversation.
Okay, great. And what's the target goal for your ICO? How much are you guys looking to raise, and when does this all happen?
So we actually haven't published the cap. There will be a hard cap, and we're going to publish it in the weeks ahead. The token sale is scheduled for November 20th. We're going to open registration in the beginning of November. And our aim is to get as wide of a distribution as possible. And so we're going to have contribution limits. in the beginning of the process. We have whitelists. So today, anybody who goes onto our Telegram channel, I think the first couple thousand people are automatically whitelisted through that. And that's propsproject.com. And we invite everybody to learn more about it.
Awesome. That's great. Well, the final question I had kind of pertains more to the general crypto space. Do you think, which is kind of turning into a trend here now with you guys coming out and running this ICO, and we had Kin and PlayKey and many other companies that have come out. They're existing companies with millions and millions of users. They're well established and they're running ICOs. Do you think that we're going to see more of this? I mean, are we going to see even bigger players like YouTube or Facebook or Google come out with their own tokens?
I think, first of all, I think the answer is yes, but I do think that it's going to be a long while before we're going to see the established incumbents and the large behemoths and the public companies tokenizing. I think that before that, we're going to see other organizations who are smart and hip and agile to ideas like open source development and others who understand the value of decentralization and who, like us, have already a built-in two-sided market that rewards contributors to that economy to understand the benefits of tokenization. And so I absolutely think we're going to see more companies doing it, and I would just like to see companies who are doing it for the right reasons, companies who actually have an ecosystem and not just doing it for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. I mean, I think there are a lot of companies out there, unfortunately, doing it for the wrong reasons, whether that's, just as a money grab, or they want to, hold the majority of the tokens. And I guess that's another form of a money grab. But it is good. And I will say that I think Props and your team are really doing this in the right way and for the right reasons. When I asked you about decentralization and why you guys are doing that, I think a lot of the reasons you presented make sense and are really valid and not just a money grab. So I want to, commend you on that, and just kind of end by giving you the floor, giving you a couple minutes to, talk more about Props and tell people where they can learn more about it.
I really appreciate it, Rob, and it's been a pleasure to have this conversation. And we really touched on the most important topics here. I want to underscore the fact that we are beta testing the product right now. Rob, as a matter of fact, I invite you to beta test it with us. And
awesome.
Great. We'll follow up right after the call.
Yeah.
And the product will be out in the market as soon as we do the token sale later in November. We're really excited about that. And, we hope to see more projects out there who actually have products ready to go, who from day one, the token that is a utility token works on it in a great and rewarding fashion. So people can learn more on propsproject.com. There are links there to our Telegram channel, which is very active, and we encourage you to participate in it and ask additional questions that you may have. And also get on our mailing list, which is right there at propsproject.com, and we'll shoot you out more information as it comes out.
Awesome. Well, Adi, thank you so much for joining me today, and best of luck with your ICO.
Thank you so much for having me, Rob.
Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. I sincerely appreciate it. If you'd like to request someone to be on the podcast in the future, tweet us at ICO Alert and let us know. Most of our guests are requests from listeners just like you, so we review every single recommendation that comes through in our Twitter feed. We'll look at everything. So if there's a lesser-known project that you think we should cover, let us know. Maybe we'll have them on the podcast. If you haven't already, please do subscribe and be the first to hear our new episodes. And also, don't forget to check out ICOalert.com to see the only comprehensive list of active and upcoming ICOs. I'm your host, Robert Finch, and I'll be back next week with a brand new episode.